We have been told for generations that the monsters hiding in the margins of our oldest maps are nothing more than the fever dreams of an ignorant past, childish fabrications born from a collective fear of the unknown. We look at drawings of scaled serpents spitting fire, colossal humanoids that could crush mountains underfoot, and winged beasts that ruled the ancient skies, and we smile at the vivid imaginations of those who came before us. We assume that because these creatures defy the laws of modern biology, they must belong entirely to the realm of fiction. But we are profoundly wrong. The terrifying truth is that our ancestors were not making things up. They were merely trying to remember. They were trying to record a deep ancestral trauma, a series of genuine encounters with a world that was radically different from the one we inhabit today, preserved through thousands of generations of oral storytelling. The myths that we dismiss as bedtime stories are actually the distorted, echoing memories of a time when humanity was not the unchallenged master of the planet, but a fragile, vulnerable species sharing the landscape with genuine titans. When we peel back the layers of metaphor, exaggeration, and religious awe that have accumulated over millennia, we find a hard, scientific core of historical reality. Our modern minds, insulated by concrete cities and artificial light, have forgotten what it feels like to be prey. We have forgotten that for the vast majority of our evolutionary journey, the shadows were alive with things that could tear us apart. The dragons, giants, and monsters of our legends are not creative inventions. They are the ghosts of very real creatures that our ancestors fought, feared, and fled from during the long, dark dawn of human history. Consider the dragon, a creature that appears with chilling consistency in the folklore of almost every independent culture on Earth, from the mist-shrouded islands of Western Europe to the river valleys of East Asia and the arid plains of the southern continents. How could societies separated by vast oceans and thousands of miles, cultures that never spoke to one another or shared a single trade route, all invent the exact same nightmare? The answer is that they did not invent it. They witnessed its remnants, and in some cases, they survived its living descendants. For millions of years, our early ancestral lineage evolved in environments dominated by massive reptilian predators. In the deep past, the Australian continent was ruled by a terrestrial lizard that grew up to 25 feet long, weighing more than a ton, equipped with serrated teeth and a venomous bite that would cause its victims to bleed to death. Early humans lived alongside this monster for thousands of years, hunting in the same forests, competing for the same game, and undoubtedly watching their companions vanish into its jaws. When those early humans sat around their fires at night, trying to describe a beast that was larger than a house, that could swallow a man whole, and whose breath carried the foul stench of decay, how would that description change over 10,000 years of whispered retellings? The lizard would grow in size. Its toxic, bacteria-laden saliva, which caused burning infections in anyone lucky enough to survive a bite, would morph in the cultural imagination into a breath of literal fire. The scales would become impenetrable armor. The creature became a dragon. And this was not an isolated experience. Across the globe, our ancestors encountered the final, dying remnants of the megafauna, massive beasts that defied modern proportions. In the Americas, they faced giant tortoises the size of small cars, and predatory birds with wingspans so immense they could block out the sun, capable of swooping down to lift a human child from the ground. The memory of a winged predator that hunts from the sky does not disappear when the species goes extinct. It gets burned into the collective psyche of the survivors, transformed by the passage of time into the magnificent, terrifying sky serpents of myth. But the monsters of our past were not always covered in scales or feathers. Sometimes they looked horrifyingly like us. Every major mythological tradition tells stories of giants, a race of colossal human beings who ruled the earth before modern humans arrived, building massive stone monuments and possessing immense strength. For centuries, mainstream science dismissed these stories as pure fantasy, a way for ancient peoples to explain the presence of large geological formations or ancient ruins whose origins had been lost to time. But recent breakthroughs in evolutionary genetics and anthropology have revealed a much more complicated and unsettling reality. We now know that modern humans were not always alone. Just a few dozen millennia ago, a mere blink of an eye in evolutionary time, our planet was home to at least half a dozen different species of humans, all living simultaneously, competing for resources, and frequently encountering one another. Among these coexisting lineages were species that would have seemed truly gigantic to our direct ancestors. In the dense forests of Asia, early hominids lived in the shadow of an ape that stood nearly 10 feet tall and weighed over half a ton, a creature that shared a common ancestor with modern primates and walked the earth at the exact same time as early humans. Imagine the absolute terror of a band of early human hunters, averaging barely 5 feet in height, stumbling into the territory of a massive, upright primate twice their size, possessing the muscular strength to break trees and crush bone with its bare hands. The memories of those terrifying encounters did not fade when the great apes vanished into extinction. Instead, they were carried forward in the stories told around campfires, passed down from parent to child, morphing over generations into tales of savage, mountain-dwelling giants who guarded the wild places of the world. Even within our own immediate evolutionary family, the physical differences between species were stark enough to birth legends. The heavy-browed, intensely muscular human lineages that occupied the cold climates of the north possessed a bone density and muscle mass that far exceeded our own. A single individual from one of these sister species could easily overpower a modern human in hand-to-hand combat. When our ancestors migrated into these territories, they engaged in a long, violent, and complex struggle for survival against these shorter but vastly stronger human cousins. The stories we tell today about trolls, ogres, and wild men of the woods, creatures of immense strength who lived in caves, possessed a strange, primal intelligence and feared the advance of human civilization, are not fictional creations. They are the literal, historical descriptions of our sister species, viewed through the distorted lens of evolutionary competition and ancestral memory. The true twist in this narrative, the revelation that recontextualizes our entire understanding of human mythology, is that these memories are not just preserved in our bedtime stories, they are hardwired into our very biology. Human beings possess an innate, instinctual fear of certain shapes, sounds, and patterns that manifest long before we are old enough to be taught what is dangerous. A child raised in a modern, sterile city who has never seen a snake or a spider in real life will still react with instant, visceral terror to a rustling sound in the grass or an elongated, slithering shape on the ground. This is not a learned behavior. It is an evolutionary inheritance. For millions of years, the individuals who paused to investigate a rustling in the bushes were eaten, while the ones who ran away survived to pass on their genes. Our brains are essentially historical archives, designed to protect us from predators that have been dead for 50,000 years. When we dream of falling from great heights, or of being chased through the darkness by a faceless predatory monster, we are not experiencing random neurological misfires. We are replaying the daily realities of our ancestors, who slept in the high branches of trees to escape the massive cats that hunted in the dark, and who spent their waking hours scanning the horizon for signs of movement. The monsters of our myths are simply the externalized, personified versions of these deeply embedded evolutionary fears. We took the claw of the cave bear, the venom of the viper, the crushing strength of the giant ape, and the terrifying speed of the raptor, and we fuse them together into the composite monsters that haunt our legends. We must understand that oral storytelling is an incredibly powerful and resilient tool for data preservation. Before the invention of writing, a tribe's survival depended entirely on its ability to pass accurate information down through the generations. A story about a giant serpent that lives in a specific valley was not just entertainment, it was a biological warning map. It told the younger generation where the dangers lay, what to avoid, and how to survive. Over thousands of years, as the specific geographical details were forgotten and the languages shifted, the core of the warning remained intact, wrapped in the protective packaging of myth. When we read about a hero slaying a dragon to save his people, we are reading a heavily romanticized account of an ancient human band successfully eliminating an apex predator that had been terrorizing their territory. We have spent the last few centuries congratulating ourselves on our rationality, believing that we have finally conquered the darkness and banished the monsters of old with the light of science and technology. We look out at our manicured parks, our paved roads, and our brightly lit cities, and we feel a sense of absolute security. But this security is an illusion, a temporary state of affairs built upon the graves of the magnificent, terrifying creatures that used to rule this planet. The world was once a place of genuine monsters, a world where humans were small, fragile, and constantly hunted. Our ancestors survived that world not through physical strength, but through their ability to remember, to learn, and to tell stories that kept the memory of the danger alive. The next time you open a book of ancient legends, or watch a film about dragons soaring through the sky and giants shaking the earth, do not dismiss what you are seeing as mere fantasy. Do not look down on the people of the past for believing in things that seem impossible to our modern sensibilities. Instead, listen closely to the echoes within those stories. Pay attention to the tight feeling in your chest when the monster appears on screen. The primal instinct that tells you to run, to hide, to climb. That fear is your inheritance. It is the voice of your ancestors, speaking to you across a vast gulf of time, reminding you of the price that was paid so that you could sit safely in the light. The monsters were real, and in the quiet, undisturbed corners of our DNA, we are still running from them.